So now we are live. So hi, Andrea. We are with Andrea Mills, sorry, from Internet Archive. Maybe you want to introduce yourself better than I can do.
Andrea Mills, you got it. Yep.
And you're working currently in the University of Toronto in Canada, right?
I am, yes. Yes. So I am the digitization program manager for Canada. So our two main sites that we work from in Canada are University of Toronto and University of Alberta in Edmonton.
Excellent. And can you tell us a little bit more about the work that you're doing there at the Internet Archive?
Sure. So just in terms of a little background, so 1996 was the inception of Internet Archive, and the question I always get asked is, why is it called Internet Archive? And it's because we started archiving the internet, archiving the web, actually, I guess, to be more accurate. So Brewster Kahle was the founder of Internet Archive. Started with the web. Since then, we have added new media types, so television, audio, video, and books. 2004 was the start of the books project. The pilot project happened here at the University of Toronto through a personal relationship with the librarian. And so since then, we've been digitizing mostly public domain material. And we have just clicked over 540,000 books that we've digitized here in Canada. And that joins, it's over 3 million books that we've digitized internationally. So we have, I think, 29 locations that we are working around the world. A few locations in South America, Asia, Europe, and the concentration mostly is actually in the United States. But we, on average, are doing about 1,000 books a week, generally across the system. But we're trying to increase that.
And that's also with the books that the satellite centers are providing you, right?
Yes, yes. So we have about, I would say, maybe 50 machines working away. So some centers have 1 machine, and our biggest center has 10 machines. So it's a range in sizes, but yeah, that includes everything in the system that we are digitizing. On top of that, we have partner libraries that are doing their own digitization and are uploading to archive.org. So here in Canada, McGill University, they have their own digitization suite, and everything that they're doing is they're uploading to the archive.
And you also have partnered with Google Books in the past, right?
Yes, we have. Yeah. So I think, if my memory is correct, we currently are doing a little bit of digitization for Google. It was material that they could not digitize on their hardware, on their machines. So we're helping to fill in the blanks a little bit. But in terms of history, we were supported by Microsoft. So there was the Microsoft Books Live project. And that was a lot of our early funding to digitize the public domain was from Microsoft. And when the Books Live project went away, they gifted us perpetual access to the material. So they put everything into the public domain, or kept it in the public domain, and the hardware. They let us continue to use the hardware that they had invested in. So.
And how did this collaboration between the private sector went for you? Like, did they give you like restraints to the material that you were able to upload?
There were some restraints, or maybe I would say they had their own preferences as to what they wanted to focus on. We've always tried to get whatever we can get our hands on. You know, Brewster always says, "Bits in is what we want." Just, you know, to to get as much material accessible to the world. And some of the organizations that we've graciously had funding from have their own segments that they're interested in, whether it's a subject area or some language preferences. But we've always done our best to fill in those blanks. Yeah.
So the option of having like this public-private partnership is something that you would recommend in general, like, or do you have some advice against it or whatever?
I think maybe from my personal experience, they have been very positive. A lot of these organizations have been great to work with, and they have a lot of funding potential coming from a lot of these organizations. And I think what I've heard, maybe not from our experience, but from other nonprofits that have done similar projects is, keeping the focus on open if you can. I've heard some stories from other national libraries around the world that partnering with some private organizations, they didn't consider some of the restrictions before signing. In retrospect, we can all learn from some of those experiences to try to keep the pressure on, free and open and getting the most use internationally from this work that we're all doing.
Excellent. And then the other question that I have for you is like, what were the main technical challenges that you had to face while doing the work in the digitalization projects? And what are the main technical challenges that you're facing now today?
Well, I think in the early years, it was the size of the files that we were dealing with. So when we were, 2005, 2006, we were, the bandwidth that we were working with isn't what it is now. So we had trouble with the hard drives filling up on the computers that we were using. Some of the way around that has been the way that we zip images and how we upload. So rather than a full image stack, our process now is more, we're sending image by image to keep it constant and not these big bubbles of data going through. Another challenge was we used to have to crop every image individually. We had a person that dragged a little text box, but when we had centers that had 25 machines running and we were doing a million pages every 2 weeks, it was not sustainable to have a person do that. So with our software is all developed in-house. So we were able to create something that did auto detection of the edges of the pages. And basically we're doing a QA pass on the cropping versus a human doing every single one of them. So little automations that when you're getting to scale make a big difference.
So you have to develop a whole suite of software for the work that you were doing, right?
We do. So our software is we've called it Scribe. So we call our hardware is called a Scribe, and the software is also called Scribe. So we're now currently on what we call Scribe 3. So 3 big evolutions in our software. But yes, it's all maintained, and most of it is created by us. Little bits and pieces are either other open source software, or some parts of our process we do use commercial products, but we've really tried to not sign up for a product that's totally made by a corporation. No, go on.
I
was just going to say the pros of that are that we have autonomy and control over the software, but sometimes the con is we have to do everything. Like if something goes wrong, we have to
you have to fix it.
We have to fix it. We have to debug it. We have, or if there are changes that we want to make, we have to develop those changes. So it can be very time consuming.
So why, like when you started, there were some few commercial options available, I imagine. So why was the reason why the Internet Archive decided to develop their own book scanners? Because you also produce your book scanners.
Yes.
Why you decided to do all this way long? Like,
So we did try the commercial options. So that was actually the first try, was that to purchase and or lease and give a try of the commercial options. So we found that the material that we were working on, especially the ones that had a vacuum arm or a robotic arm, they just were not getting the results that we wanted. Either being too rough on the page, or especially with some of the older material, very thin paper, picking up more than one page. So we moved away from using those robotic or vacuum solutions, and we use clean human hands instead of a robotic arm. So that was one reason. And we also wanted to have control over the camera and images that we were producing, rather than it being something integrated into a machine. Because when we wanted to get to a fleet of machines, we also maintain a fleet of cameras and lenses. So it's a bit of a cycle that we use to keep everything in working order, so that we could swap out those components and share them. If another center needs a camera, I can put it in a box and I send it to them, and they can get it the next day, depending on where they are.
So basically, your book scanners are using cameras. So
Yes.
we met recently in Toronto due to the CC Summit, and well, Andrea, you showed me all the scribes that you had there, and we were talking a little bit about the cameras. What are like the next challenges that you are facing right now with cameras?
I think some of the big challenges are controlling it by USB, so that the model of camera that we were using for many years, the new revisions of that model were not as easily controlled by USB, which is how we manage the cameras. Another issue is also image quality. So over time, different camera brands have made a focus on different things. So we have, I won't name brands, but we are changing to a different brand. So we're needing to develop the software to meet the new camera model, and the drivers and software that firmware on the camera to work with our software. So that's been a challenge. And I think that the other thing that we talked about was struggling to get a untouched image out of the camera, because we want to get something that hasn't had processing on it, and keep that master file, so that if anybody wants to go back to that, they can. And that if there is any processing that we do as we're making derivatives, we can always roll it back to that raw image from the camera. And that's been a struggle across brands, without having to get a Hasselblad or a $25,000 camera, because we're also managing price. So we want it to be affordable-ish, not $25,000, somewhere much lower than that, for us to maintain our fleet, and also for our partners, right? Trying to get the cost down, not quite as low as I think we maybe want to get to, but yeah.
But this is also because you're struggling a lot with maintaining high quality, right? But in this case, like, What do you think, like, because here in South America in general, it's pretty hard to access to all this technology for a reasonable and affordable price. So what's like the main goal of the Internet Archive in this sense? Like, is your main goal like providing access or having good quality? Like, if you had to set a priority.
Right. I think our focus is always access. It's always, we hear from a lot of partners, quality is very important. So I won't discount that 100%, but we want people to be able to access this material wherever they are. If they have internet access, they can access at least to read it in the browser. And so that's one reason why we haven't used TIFF as our master file. We use JP 2000 because it's a little bit, it's not quite as big and it's easier to move around. So actually we have done some testing with very consumer grade cameras for our tabletop scribe. So the small version, mobile version of our big scribe. And the thing that came to light that maybe we didn't expect was maybe I should have expected that the cameras, the lifespan of the cameras when you're shooting all day long is much lower when it's the consumer grade camera. So there's sort of a bit of a sweet spot where you maybe go up in price point, but that camera stays healthy longer.
Yes.
It's hard, it's hard because especially in some of the remote locations where we have these machines, it takes a long time for a camera to get there. So if the camera has failed, the time that it is sitting idle is expensive as well. So and that's been an interesting part of the journey, trying to figure that out. What is the best price point for a camera?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And going back to the part of access, because you are putting all the content online, you have, well, of course, archive.org, where you can find all the stuff, and also you have the open content library. I don't know if I'm naming the project right.
Open library. Yeah,
the open library, sorry. You have the open library. So in terms of rights management, most of the stuff that you license is also in the public domain. So you are using some variations of Creative Commons licenses and public domains, Mark. So how are you putting your content online, and how are you using the CC licenses, and what's the role of CC in all of this, of Creative Commons?
So you're right. The majority of the material is in the public domain that we have digitized. So where Creative Commons has come in and helped quite a bit is with some of our partners who are the rights holder. So even if it is in the public domain, some of our partners are much more comfortable putting it out, knowing that we can put a Creative Commons license on it that gives at least a guideline on how they would like it to be used. And we have a mechanism so that if it's just a metadata tag on any item that uses the code, the CC codes, that on the website, it populates it as the full URL and has the nice logo and everything. So it makes it quite easy to add that to a large amount of items in one go. And when we're dealing with material that's not in the public domain, again, it's really been helpful to our partners to know that even if they've made an agreement with us that we can make it available online, for the public to know how to use it and who is the rights holder has been a great asset. And the part that comes to mind is sites crawl the Internet Archive all the time. Like on a daily basis, they're either indexing or they're harvesting material that's been put up. So using the CC license and having it in the metadata for the item can help if it has a restriction in any way, that bots can maybe disregard it. What was the last thing that I was going to say about that?
So you will say that it's a useful tool for enabling search and discovery of the items that you have in your collection, right?
Yes. I think one thing that I've thought about since we were at the summit is about metadata. So we put a license up that I suppose is relating to the content. So the different formats that we have available, but our metadata is actually all in the public domain. So we have a metadata API. Anything that someone has uploaded or that we have ingested from a partner library, that metadata is all CC0 as well. But we don't have a way to denote that it is all open and accessible. So, but putting the license on it is something that we don't display. So I wonder, something to think about.
Yeah, well, but also because there are other options like right statement that are doing some certain work in that direction, because there are also some stuff that eventually, if a copyright reform succeeds in certain places, you could potentially put orphan works online.
Yes.
But there you cannot put a CC license over there. So because it's actually it's not actually CC license, it's a different type of right statement. So
yeah, so I think that is an ongoing conversation for sure. The how can we work with groups like Right Statement to come up with new advice, like new statements that we can put on some of the material, because some of the material sort of falls into a category that may not be covered by a CC license. So,
and this is also related with the other big project that you are trying to come up with now, the Lend project. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so we call it Digitize and Lend. So this is the material that's available on openlibrary.org. And so a lot of this material most of this material is not in the public domain. And the way that we are running this project is we have a physical archive of books. So the Internet Archive does have a library distinction, and we own, I think it's over, I'm losing my numbers here, at least 500,000 books that we own ourselves and we keep in our physical archive. So if we own the book, we digitize it, it's available in Open Library to borrow. So you borrow it like you do with the public library, or if you're using Overdrive or something like that, and the software works very similarly. You have an Open Library card, log in, borrow your book, and you get it for 2 weeks. And it does have a DRM, so it's like exploding PDF or EPUB, or if you want to just read it in the browser, you can do that and you get it for 2 weeks. And there's also a waiting list option. So if the book you'd like is checked out, you can get on the list for it. And we basically want to get that, we want to have millions of books available in that way. So that's the collection that we are growing and wanting to grow over the next few years. And definitely looking for partners that have material that's, post-23 material, that want to contribute or help us digitize them and get them online.
Yeah, and also it's an interesting question, because it's an interesting quest, the one that you have initiated with this project, because traditionally copyright didn't mess up with the physical copies that you had. Like it won't have any say on which way you were lending your material, in the way you were reading it, and even buying it. And now that everything has gone digital, it seems to be touched by copyright in a way or in another. So, Andrea, I don't want to steal any more time from you, but I still have one more last question, and it's related to what you have just said. You're searching for partners. So can you please tell us a little bit or explain us in which way libraries, archives, and other cultural institutions can collaborate and get engaged with the Internet Archive? I know that there are many ways of exploring this, but maybe you can tell us, like, either it could be putting a satellite center or just recommending books to digitize, or...
Yeah, I think there is definitely a long list of ways that we can collaborate. I think for institutions that are digitizing material, we would love to help them contribute that material to Internet Archive. So make them a collection space, allow them access to upload to their collection. And one thing I didn't say about CC licenses is when you are even using the public uploader, you're uploading one PDF, there is a CC option. You can choose your license when you are doing an upload to the archive. So that's one way. Another way would be, I think it was on your list that you mentioned, what books would be desirable to people in education or students in South America, for example? What would be a good list of books to make available in something like Open Library? If libraries are discarding or they're weeding their collections, we accept book donations of books because that's what feeds our Digitize and Lend program. I know non-English collections are vastly underrepresented in Open Library, and that's directly related to the physical books that we have. So in multilingual books, that's something that is a way that we could collaborate. And centers for digitization, I think partners that are interested, we would love to work together, whether that means putting one of our machines or working together to get one of our machines in a new location. Or, as I said, if you're digitizing using things like the DIY book scanner, can we make a link between that workflow and uploading it to Internet Archive for storage and access, and bringing it together with all of the other material that's there. So lots of ways.
Yeah, but in the last case that you're mentioning, there is important to bear in mind that it's only for public domain books, right?
Well, yes.
Or more.
Well, I think where we are experimenting and in discussion with groups such as publishers. So if it's a publisher that is wanting to have their back catalog digitized and willing to make it available, we can help. If they are the rights holder and they don't have an ebook for their publication from 1940. We want to work with more people like that to say, we're the rights holder. We want it to be available to everybody. And we are exploring some orphan works projects. Like, no news on that in that vein. It's the problem that we all face is the research involved and the level of certainty that you have that it is an orphan work is hard. So it's a developing story as to how we can attack that part. But in all, we want to focus on the 20th century. That's a century of almost a century, let's say, of material that is not accessible online. So in a variety of ways, whether that's lending those books, or if we can make them fully accessible to anybody that wants them, that's obviously preferential, but even lending them is progress. Yeah.
Yeah, and yes, I said it was going to be the last question, but I still have one more, because sometimes like people feel, no, the Internet Archive is a project from the United States and they are all doing this because they are the imperialism, whatever, and so can you like name some of the reasons why sometimes it might be better to put your content over Internet Archive than like building your own platform and things like that? Like what's the main reason that you can say for collaborating with the Internet Archive? I know a lot, but maybe you are more convincing than me.
Well, I think some of the best reasons are that it's an existing infrastructure and a lot of people use the site. So where is I had it in my notes here. How many people every day? Lots of people every day. I think on some days it's more than 1 million people come to the Internet Archive. So if you want your material to be used and to get outside of your local stakeholders, something like the Internet Archive is used all over the world. Sometimes in some categories outside of the United States, people are using it much more than actually people within the US. So that's one reason. And because we have a focus on open source and for the material to be publicly accessible, I know that it can be enticing to work with some groups or to have your material digitized for free to you, because then it's done. It often means that there's a restriction as to who can access the material, and that's sort of I've always trumpeted that the important thing is that as many people that can access the material will be able to. So that is one thing. And building your own infrastructure is very expensive. Like I've had many conversations with partners that have wanted to digitize and build a way to recoup their costs by selling the PDF or whatever it is. But I think, building and maintaining that system, you're putting so much money into restriction versus putting money into access. So it's like, what do you want to do? What is your focus? So we want people to use the stuff versus it sitting in a dark archive somewhere.
Okay, excellent. So thank you, Andrea. Thank you for your time. And well, I hope this initiates a lot of conversations between the Internet Archive and some other people here. And Absolutely. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Scan.
Bye.
Bye.